Hey guys, Ricky here with another video tutorial today talking about presets and what is inherently wrong with them and how they can suit you better. Um, I have explored with a lot of presets and have recently branched out to try some new options, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion, and I just figured maybe it was time to share that with you since I've just been getting a lot of ads thrown at me on my social media for presets to buy and just options to help me edit to have a stronger style, or to edit like other photographers. And so I just figured I would go through and talk about basically how that is incredibly untrue when it comes down to it. And the number one thing is that no two photographers shoot the same, even if you have very similar shooting styles or you have very similar editing styles, or if you have both started with the same preset group and ended with similar results. What it comes down to is you just simply will not be the same. And I feel strongly that most photographers who begin have all started with the same basic preset pack and then made their own and then honed that specific style, their style, based on that. So there's kind of a gap that maybe you're not noticing because they don't tell you, hey, I started with VSCO presets, or I started with Prime presets, or I started with small presets, and this is how I've developed my style from there. So there can be a lot of gap information that's lost, as well as understanding the key components in Lightroom that really make up how the editing and the presets are composed and what that does or doesn't do to your photos. So with that being said, here is a photo I've taken that I did use a preset on, but then I changed completely because it just didn't fit my style. I can't show you the before because I didn't have the raw file available, but this worked really well, but it's, no matter how hard I try, I couldn't quite get it to fit exactly the look that I wanted it to, but it worked really well and I did like it, so I stuck with it. But then I also have photos here that a lot of photographers in their tutorials I've seen for using their presets, they tell you to go ahead and start editing it the way you would like to, with what matters to you, which I'm not really sure is all that helpful because a lot of that can change or be affected by the preset. So as you can see, I've just hit auto toning. And let's say we'll go ahead and correct the white balance a little bit. Well, it's terrible. And then we can practice some presets. So it's hard to say what these presets were originally created for, how they looked. But the fact of the matter is that when you put them over your photos, rarely will they ever just be a click and done sort of situation. And oftentimes I find that the settings are so drastically changed that you have to go through and re-edit the photo additionally anyway. And so by starting with a preset and then having to re-edit the photo anyhow, you're essentially hindering yourself from understanding what made your photo look the way that it did. And then from there, you lose out on honing in on your style to be as consistent and strong as the people who've created these presets. So that is not always the case. That is just, especially for new photographers, as you're learning, as you're developing, that's something you should be mindful of. And I just want to take you through what that looks like. So I went over all these presets to give you an idea. If I'm going through this and I'm like, well, what's the best one that I could probably start with and that I could work on my style with? So let's do this preset. This kind of has some of the sunset color look I want. It's a little contrasty, so let's kind of change some of those things. One thing I'm noticing right away, lens corrections are unselected, so let's fix that. I find the tone curve to be the hardest to readjust when it's already edited, and you can see here how specific these things are. There's 5 or more points made here, and it's going to take a lot of kind of picking through to see what I don't like. So I'm going to skip that one for right now. Let's go to the color panel. And here all these again are pretty dramatically changed. In fact, we can just turn them off and see what colors are changed that maybe I like or don't like. Same for tone curve, you could just turn it off and see what a drastic difference that is. And the thing is, even by turning that off, because so many other panels are changed, it takes you to a whole different look of your photo that doesn't do it justice, because if you remember, here's the raw file. So there's naturally more contrast already in the photo. So it really kind of takes away what it could be. So, or I guess not what it could be, but what you might be looking for, because it's changing your eye and how you're looking for these things the whole way through. So I am not one to adjust colors quite so much, especially the hues, unless I feel it looks natural. That's my particular style. I don't like things to look really unnatural. I like it to, it makes me feel more comfortable as a photographer, especially with the style of photography I do, to keep things more in line with kind of how I see it, but maybe a little better. And if you've heard me talk about this at all, you'll know that's something that I say often. I just want an enhanced version of the real thing. So if you're noticing, if you've been watching any of my videos, you're already probably seeing things that I already do every time I take pictures, every time I edit pictures. I'm already going through the same split toning, the same HSL color, and it's starting to make me wonder, why exactly would I be using this preset if I'm having to undo and redo and figure out what it is that I want anyway. But for the sake of this, let's keep going. Turn off calibration, turn it back on. That's not a huge difference, so I'm just going to let it go. I don't mind that so much. And I think it really comes back to, now we're at tone curve. So here we are again, turning it off, turning it on. And for my particular style, this color gradation and contrast is just too extreme. This would not fit into my feed. It doesn't fit into my work. And so I'm sure there's a lot of photographers who would say, well, of course you have to edit it to fit your photos. You know, we don't shoot the same. And that's exactly my point, that, you know, in order to get those styles of what they're doing, you have to understand the final result that they're looking at. It's likely that they've already envisioned how they want that photo to look, and they can do that because they've already figured out these things on Lightroom or Photoshop, and they're not trying to undo anything. They're just now making it completely their own, and that's something very much to keep in mind. So I'm still kind of looking for what is going to work for me in this one. And knowing that this is sunset, there's already harsh light happening. It's hard to say exactly how I would like this photo anymore. I'm just not really sure. I'm going to keep going back to the original. I know I would warm that up, lighten some contrast. It's a little too warm. I think I could be okay with that. It's still a little different for me. You can see here how the matte toning, the film look. I don't know if there's a proper term for lifting those shadows and kind of softening that area. If there's a proper term for that, feel free to let me know. But you can see that it's really high on this left side in the shadows area, and that's, as much as I like that look, and I like bringing this up a little bit, it's still a little too much for me. So we're just in the RGB channel right here, which is adjusting all the colors, and we're just going to bring that down. In fact, let's go ahead and try to work with an S-curve and see what that does. Oops. Based on where things are. A little much right there. So, you know, a lot of times they say to just go right for creating an S-curve and see how that looks. And a lot of times that works, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you want to do the opposite. By the time you have these points in here, you know, you're kind of restricted to messing with these particular tonal points. You can obviously delete them too. So, for example, I wouldn't usually have one right here. Oops. Right click, don't hit delete on your keyboard, and delete that point right there. And so we'll stick with that. That could work. I'm not sure that would still fit in with my work. But let's move on to another option. Here is a landscape where I'm working with shadows, and I really want this to pop. I want this to stand out, and I really want to make it kind of more what I see in my mind's eye. And in my mind's eye, there's a bit more balance between the shadows and the landscape that's blurred. I want, despite the focus being very, with a very low aperture and focused here on these rocks, I really want you to be drawn to the point that you're kind of looking around the frame and seeing what's there. So just a few adjustments here. Let's make sure lens corrections are on. Okay, and then let's go ahead and check out some presets. And I do feel like on landscapes or products where you aren't worrying about the skin tones in portraits or anything, you can get away with preset adjustments a little bit more. Like I could easily take this particular one right here and change it to where it fits a little bit more of my style without fussing as much as I would say on a portrait if someone was in the frame. Here we have some VSCO options, and it really just depends on like what looks good to me, what tone do I want to start with. And I think this kind of low contrast right here is going to be a good starting point. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to start making adjustments based on what I want this photo to look like in the end. It really just, I will say though, especially for these VSCO here, I've already updated a lot of these presets to suit my needs. Not that I use them very often, but I do. Sometimes I like the option. If I can't seem to get an edit right and it's just not working for me, I will start going through and see what's different in other presets, and I think that's probably where I found the most help. But I've really found myself going back time and again to just editing from the raw file on my own to figure out what is it that I really need to change here, what is it that I'm going for, what is the look that I want, and knowing, so like see here, that yellow-green color, it bugs me, it just really stands out, but I go to green here, it's like, oh, the saturation's pretty low already, what is it? Well, you have to know that there's obviously a lot of yellow in that green, and right here, the hue, that was the first thing I went to go change was that hue, and then desaturate it because I still like the green. I want it to be, there to be a little bit, but not as much, and not have the yellows also faded to green to stand out in a way that looks unnatural to my eye here. So this is already looking better. I do think I want the highlights to be a little warmer, and I think maybe we're going to come over to this side. Maybe let's invert these and see what that looks like. Not so much. It gives it more of a matte film look, which is good, but it doesn't quite fit my style that I try to remain consistent with. And I think that's the most important thing that I find to be a little irksome as I go through and I see presets coming around, is just that, you know, if you make that specific preset your style, or you customize it to fit your style and that works for you, 100% do that. There's nothing wrong with it. I think that's a great idea. If that helps you navigate your photography and your editing, absolutely do that. But if you find yourself like just reaching at all these different presets looking for options and nothing is really sticking out to you, or nothing's really working for your what was really pleasing to your eye, or for that matter you're not getting results that other photographers are, I can see how that would be really frustrating. And I'm also seeing preset prices are increasing more and more and more. So where it used to be, here's a $29 preset, here's a $49 preset, now here's a $135 preset, and you get 4 or 5 and you're stuck with very specific styles. So this particular preset pack is by a photographer whose work that I really love. I love the warm contrasty tones of their work, and then I'm looking through these presets, I'm like, wait a second, where are those warm contrasting tones? There's almost none. And so it's a little frustrating to, if that's not something you understand. So it doesn't mean I can't use them, it doesn't mean I can't make it work for myself, but it does mean that I need to have a really fair understanding of of what I'm getting myself into. And if you're anything like me, maybe a little bit frugal in price, and that's something that you want to keep in mind, which I think is very, very important. So there's going to be a photo like this where it's just like, at least for me, where I'm just like, man, this is like kind of whatever. This is not super interesting. I don't really even know where to begin. I have a vision and I'm not sure how to execute it. How do I take this photo and still make it work? How do I make this stand out for some to be something that I can share or put in my Instagram feed or whatever? I know that it's there. I know in my mind's eye I can see it. I'm just not quite sure how to execute it. And sometimes if I keep going, if I just keep, slowly working through different things and I keep looking like, oh, what is it that I'm liking or not liking? Well, the highlights are a little too high. Drop the exposure a little bit. Let's see, that green is a little bit too much. Let's make some adjustments. And I know a lot of photographers kind of go extreme to show you and see, but I also know that that tends to throw me off. So I'm pretty gentle with my sliders, even as an example. So that to me looks a lot better. I'm like, oh, I really still want this to stand out. Well, let's go through and see if there's anything that could possibly resonate to help me make this photo pop. Or maybe I should just dedicate myself to trying harder to edit it with my own presets. And this photographer whose presets here, has a really dramatic style, which is not quite mine, but I know does a really good job with consistency for his work. So that's something to keep in mind and know that that's his and not mine. And these are probably the more extreme example of what it will simply not work for me. And it makes me a little sad because I see his work and I see him selling these and I want to support that. I have supported that. And I'm looking through here and I'm just like, man, that's just not going to be for me. These are just not going to work. And so, you're out that cost and you have to keep looking for more, or you have to, now it's another learning curve. It's not just editing. Now you're taking a whole other step and trying to figure out, how do I now make this preset work specifically for me? And it can be a journey. It can add a layer of frustration to your editing if you're already not as comfortable as maybe you want to be. And editing is a learning curve. Just like you learn photography, you have to learn to edit your photography. And so presets can be low clarity. That would drive me crazy. That's something that, huge thing. I would never ever do that in my own photos. That's okay if that's his thing. That's definitely not mine. Another thing, if you're not looking for that, and you miss that mark, and then you go to share that photo on your Instagram, and you're like, whoa, that just doesn't work. What did I do wrong, or how is it so off? If you don't know what to look for, if you don't know what has been changed, it could really create more work or frustration or misunderstanding that you have to spend a lot of time to work through. So the thing I still want to work with in this photo is, this is water right here, there's sand. I really want there to be blue tones kind of coming through. So I'm really not getting that in any of the presets. So let's try to see if I can just make that happen on my own. And here's where knowing how to do that is going to be key, because you're not going to get that kind of specific detail. Okay, let's see if we can further fix kind of how this looks. So I don't know if I would consider this the perfect edit, or if I would truly be satisfied here, but I think this is a starting point, and here's the before, here's the after. It's definitely more dynamic. I'm just simply working for shadows for my weekly theme here that I'm working for photo prompts every week. And I do think it's more dynamic, it's definitely more interesting, and it's just for kind of an example, a thumbnail image, and I'd say that's not bad. I really do like the direction of that. And then just to show you before and after for all of these, to kind of have an idea how to fit these to my style. I think overall that they would not truly be 100% worth my time. I think if there's someone's photography style that you really love and you really want to invest in, by all means invest in it. Take the time and support that photographer, support their work, and find out how it can work for you. But you also should really know how they're using Lightroom, if they have videos to share, editing tutorials, and where they're coming from and how their work looks when it's edited. So you have an understanding that when you go through these presets and you're just like, wow, like to me, there's so many things in this I would never use, and it's like, where would they use a photo like, where editing like this? How does that fit in? And maybe that's something that that person uses all the time, but how am I supposed to know that? And so as the buyer of these presets, you just can't really know. So I really do hope that you found this helpful. I hope that maybe you are inspired to work on making your own presets. I have shared a video recently of doing that, and it is a very easy, very fun, simple process. And you can just go through just like this, and what I can do right now is create a preset based on what I've made. And so if I'm, let's see, contrasting water. So say that's just what I'm going to go for. And I have now created a preset based on these exact specifications. But then let's go down here to user presets. And here's contrast water. But I'm going to move over here and say I apply that preset. Undo for the before. It's amazing how it doesn't fit from one to the other. You have to know very specifically the style you're looking for, how that affects one image over the other. See, like that almost kind of works. Like I would want more green in that personally, to look a little more natural, but like I've seen photos like this all over the place. So like it works for the color tones here, not with actual blue in the water, but then it does semi-work here. So it's just like, it's kind of amazing how that works out, and it just really helps to know. So just start, like, edit a photo and keep working on it till you really love it, and then go back to a few others and see if you can do the same thing, and then start saving those presets and just make your own. And then as you go, you can further fix and enhance those specific adjustments you've made to customize and make presets that work for you, and then you've saved yourself, hundreds of dollars potentially. But if it's just still not something you want, then again, support the photographers, buy their presets, and customize them again to make them work for you, which is another thing that people don't say, is when you buy other photographers' presets, is you can still customize them. Because if let's see, what did I start this photo with? You can look at the history and go through, and I can try to find, I used the Summer Vibe preset originally. Looking at it right here, that doesn't quite do it for me. It's not bad, it's just not what I need for my brand, or to share on my feed. That would be a huge one-off. But that does fit a little bit more. I don't know if I could actually share this particular photo, but if it did fit, that would work. And so now I can save it, so if I ever come across a photo with the same color tones and light, then I can use it again, just like I did over here. And so update those presets, make them work for you, or make your own, whatever works. So I hope that you found that helpful. Please understand I'm coming from a place of simply learning and educating, that I'm not saying don't buy presets. I'm not saying you have to buy presets, but I'm just saying go in with an open mind, with knowing what you're doing, and supporting yourself and your style, because that's the most important thing at the end of the day, is your work as a photographer.